You're listening to Where You Live with Gene Sullivan.
Welcome back to Where You Live. I'm Gene Sullivan, broadcasting from the True North Painting Studios. The show is also brought to you by American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency, and Extreme Exteriors. I'd like to let our listeners know we have a free gift for you. We put together a bi-monthly newsletter called What's New. A lot of what we'll talk about on the show, we talk about in further detail. People that are on the show are also contributors. It's yours free for the asking. Give us a call at New Concepts during the week at 952-922-2500. Ask for Lori, and she'll make sure that you start receiving your copy either electronically or by mail. Well, I am happy to also have with us to weigh in on this whole issue of displaying the American flag, a attorney who's been with us before. I'm speaking with Donna DiMaggio Berger, and Donna is an attorney, shareholder in the firm of Becker and Poliakoff, practices community association law, and I also want to point out, folks, that she's a member of the prestigious national organization, the College of Community Association Lawyers. And this is an organization which distinguishes people who have really contributed to the area of community association law and the whole profession and ethics. And we're happy to have back on the show to weigh in on this matter, Donna DiMaggio Berger. Hi, Donna.
Hi, Gene. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, I'm glad you could be a part of the show here. You've we're kind of on hold here a little bit with while we were talking with Mr. Murphy, and I imagine being in Florida, you have certainly been hearing about this in the news quite a bit.
Oh, absolutely. And I enjoyed hearing the dialogue back and forth. I think you hit on some good points. The obstinance is a problem, regardless of, whichever part is being obstinate. It's one thing to have principles, but it's another thing to be obstinately blind about them.
Yes, and we talked about this a little bit before. Let me just ask you, if you were talking to the association or talking to Mr. Murphy, what would you have been doing in counseling any of these parties on how to handle or try to come to an area of compromise?
Well, the first thing with the association, in Florida we have specific statutes on point regarding the ability to fly certain flags. This is a homeowners association, and in Chapter 720, it lays out very specifically the size of the flag and that the flag can be portable, removable, official flag, and displayed in a respectful manner. So if the association came to me and I represented it and said, we have a person and he's put a flag in a flower pot, what can we do? My first question would be, what size is the flag and what is your problem with it? Are there other flags? How are those flags displayed? Because in this case, the only thing I can imagine, because his flag does fit within the size requirement, it is an American flag. It's not some flag that's not recognized by the statute. The only thing I can think of is that the association is claiming that it's not being displayed in a respectful manner, and you touched on that before. I've looked into the community, and there are other flags that are being flown, but they're basically wall-mounted or on poles, so it's a little bit different than sticking it in a flower pot. If I was talking to Mr. Murphy and he came to me and said, I really want to fly this flag, I would say, well, you have the right to do it specifically under the Homeowners Association statute, but why is it so important to display it in this particular manner? So to try to boil down what is the essence of the dispute? Is it the way it's being flown, or is it really about something else?
Yeah, and let's just put this in perspective, too, because I know you have probably dealt with hundreds and hundreds of HOAs in your career in giving counsel. This is this kind of, headbutting that we see. And, of course, people love to see things like this in the news. And but by far, the majority of most people living in an HOA live so in a very peaceful manner. And if they have a question or a misunderstanding between the board and themselves, what they can and can't do, they usually can work together towards compromise and never have to go to court.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this really boils down to communication skills. Let's face it, some people have better communication skills than others, and that, applies both to owners and to board members. But in this case, I hate to see communities where things escalate unnecessarily. And Mr. Murphy made one comment that I would, take objection with, which is they're bent on getting him out of his house. I have rarely, and I've been doing this for 2 decades, seen a community where that's what they're interested in. When you're foreclosing, it's typically to get the amounts owed. Now, whether or not they should have been accepting payments, that's another story. I would urge anyone listening that if you have a dispute with your association, the worst possible thing you can do is to stop paying.
Exactly.
The best possible thing you can do is to seek reasonable, competent counsel and seek out opportunities to discuss the issue. And sometimes it's an impetus for either running for the board or getting other people involved. And I always tell people who have a significant problem with their association, how do your neighbors feel? Do they join you in this fight? And if they find that they're alone in this fight, the problem might be them. If they're joined by their neighbors, the problem might be the board.
Yes, that's exactly right. Now, I know in Minnesota, Donna, there are, I would say, a majority of the governing documents for an HOA will have some sort of mechanism in the bylaws. If the board is making a requirement, a rule, a regulation that isn't, the people don't think, or a decision that isn't fair, the homeowner has the ability and has recourse, and what they need to do is they need to get a requisite number of signatures and a signed petition and ask for a special meeting for the purpose of being able to discuss. And at that meeting, the majority of homeowners can actually overturn something that is a board's decision. Is that the same in Florida as well?
Well, it depends. First you need to look at the governing documents for each association. Sometimes boards don't have the ability to pass restrictions without membership approval, but that's the exception rather than the rule.
Okay.
Any rule that the board, assuming the board has authority to pass these kind of rules, they have to be tied to a reasonableness standard. And in this case, that is why our statutes were actually changed to address it. Some boards, frankly, were not reasonable in the way they approached people wanting to fly flags. In the past, some communities said, no, you can't fly any flags, and that's why the Florida legislature got involved and said, no, we want people who are veterans and otherwise patriotic to have the ability, regardless of restrictions, to fly flags. But again, it's always tied to what are you trying to accomplish? Is it a reasonable goal?
Yeah. So what do you think of the board's position in doing the $100 a day fine? Because that's allowed by state statute, but it's capped at $1,000. Is that correct?
Well, they can actually, in the homeowners association, and the law has changed on this back and forth. At one time, they could lien for fines, and then a few years back, that was removed from the statute, and then 2 years ago it was put back in. So right now the association can go forward and foreclose on just a fine. Now it sounds, from what I heard when you were discussing this with Mr. Murphy, that he also hasn't paid assessments perhaps, and that's where he got into problems, because frankly I think an association that's going to try to foreclose on the basis of fines alone, I think they're going to have a problem finding a judge who is going to grant a foreclosure over a fine.
Okay.
Now, if he hasn't paid, I think he has dug a deeper hole for himself.
Yeah. Now he was making those statements, and he came out with a press release. But in all fairness to the association, they did too, and this was the press release from the Tides at Sweetwater Condominiums Association. They said, we would like to formally respond to recent media releases associated with the current flower pot violation. Mr. Murphy about demonstrating patriotism by flying the American flag. We have established rules, they said, that conform with the United States Code and Florida statutes regarding flag etiquette, and we encourage residents to fly American flags in accordance with those state and national standards. And they said the association has not prohibited any owner from properly displaying an American flag. So it sounds like they're saying that they just don't think that this was done in a proper manner.
It sounds like that to me as well, and which is what I originally thought, because it meets the size restrictions, and that is going to hinge on the wording in the statute which says displayed in a respectful manner. And so now it's going to boil down to is sticking a flag in your flower pot and leaving it out perpetually, is that respectful?
Yes.
It should be an interesting case.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit further about that, but we need to take a break right now. You can stay on with us for one more segment, can't you, Donna?
Absolutely.
Great. Folks, we're talking to attorney Donna DiMaggio-Berger from the law firm of Becker and Poliakoff. She is going to be back with us as we wrap up today's show after these messages.